Over the past year, through conversations with several of my guests, including today's, I've come to think about the holiday of Passover in a deeper way. Passover is when we relive the tale of the Israelites' exodus from Egypt, the harrowing escape from 430 years of slavery into full-blown Jewish liberation. We are meant not just to retell the story, but to re-experience it, as if we ourselves were those slaves emerging from bondage, year after year after year. My Passover seders have always been focused around kids, of which there are many in my family, so the seders have sometimes felt a bit unsubstantial and somewhat rote. But this year, I've been inspired to search for real meaning in the holiday, and in my reflection, I've hit upon three observations. Behaviors some of us unconsciously engage in on Pesach that really stand out for me in light of what we as a Jewish community are experiencing today. First, it has long been a tradition, and a beautiful one, to find the parallels between the struggles of the Israelites in the Passover story and other contemporary communities also suffering under oppression. From Soviet refuseniks to the African American community to victims of sex trafficking and child labor, to name just a few, there has sadly never been a shortage of comparable narratives on which to focus. It is a powerful way to deepen our empathy for those who need it, to humble us in our comforts, and teach our children about the Jewish values of justice and freedom for everyone everywhere, core ideals of our people and faith. And the situation for Jews right now is not the same as it was 1, 2, 5, 10, 20 years ago. We certainly are no slaves, far from it thanks to Israel and our strong position here in the U.S., but there are enemies around us bent on our destruction, and frenemies who don't understand how their words and actions contribute to that corrosive pursuit. So this year, give yourself permission, should you so desire, to let this holiday, which is about the suffering and ultimately deliverance of the Jewish people, be about the Jewish people. If you want. No pressure, but no pressure not to. We of the recent Jewish Golden Age are not accustomed to feeling victimized or needing help or even being able to bear the idea of focusing on our own plight. This is new for us, and not just because we are a strong and resilient people, but also because of that voice, the one that whispers, be more assimilated, don't make it about you. You. Jews are going to be fine. We always find a way. But right now, it's okay if you don't feel fine. And if you still do want to bring focus to the distress of another group, give yourself the recognition that in spite of our own difficulties, you are actively choosing to highlight the hardships of others. That kind of intentionality only deepens the significance of the action and will bring even more meaning to your holiday celebration. Second observation, in some ways the mirror image of the first. In the Passover story, God rains down horrific violence against the enemies of the Jewish people. Not only does God drown the legions of Pharaoh, including their horses, in the Red Sea, but he sends the angel of death to murder every firstborn son in every Egyptian household, again including animals for some reason. According to ChatGPT, based on rough population models, a 6-figure death toll among firstborns is a reasonable guess at the scale of the devastation. Said another way, one I find particularly resonant this year, the God of the Jews slaughters thousands of innocent civilians, many of them children, in order to free the Jews from captivity. I feel like this mass murder of Egyptians is usually somewhat glossed over in the Seder proceedings. It is certainly Pharaoh who's responsible for bringing the immense suffering of the plagues upon his own people by repeatedly refusing diplomatic calls to free the Jews from bondage, which would very clearly be the moral and just thing to do. And it is the Jews who are oppressed and then pursued by Egyptian enemies. So again, tough to find fault with our collective non-reaction to scores of bad guys receiving their just desserts in the name of liberation from brutal oppression. And I can't help but wonder, was there perhaps another way to achieve the freedom of the Jewish people without killing thousands of children? Perhaps there wasn't. And after all, it worked. So there's obviously a case to be made that the ends justify the means. And yet, do they? Is freedom from clear and malevolent villainy always worth its cost in innocent blood? How culpable is a population for the actions of its leadership, or its children for the actions of their parents? At the very least, don't we as Jews have the moral obligation to pause the unfolding of our narrative to ask these questions rigorously and sincerely? We don't need to be afraid of the answers, whatever they may be. Finding the humility and honesty required to seek them is in and of itself a necessary and worthwhile exercise in accountability and integrity. And a final observation. Every year in the Haggadah, the Seder booklet, we read the words, B'shana haba'ah b'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. This phrase was added to the Haggadah hundreds of years ago, during the 14th century, but was in use for centuries before it as well. And however you want to interpret it, whether it's literally about you visiting or moving to Jerusalem, or the Jewish people returning there after centuries of exile, or the Messiah appearing there and ushering in the Messianic era, or the Israeli version next year in a rebuilt Jerusalem, it is impossible to deny Jerusalem's place within the heart of the Jewish people. And yet, some people choose to, while others breeze through this line without pausing to appreciate how momentous, how fantastic, how unbelievable it is that any of us could indeed be in Jerusalem next year, should we so choose. Do you know how many times the word Jerusalem is mentioned in the Quran? 0 times. How about in the Hebrew Bible? 660 times. Aside from some medieval periods of exile, there have been Jews in Jerusalem since the Ottoman Empire, and it has been a majority Jewish city since the mid-1800s, well before the establishment of the modern state of Israel. Anyone who says a connection to Israel is not intrinsic to being Jewish is either misinformed, disingenuous, or a little too excited to present their own fringe belief as mainstream Jewish thought. It isn't. So this year, when you utter those sacred words in your own Seder, next year in Jerusalem, do so with kavanah, with deep feeling and intentionality. Take that moment to remember how lucky we are to have moved that phrase from a wish to a reality. Hanukkah might be the holiday most associated with miracles, but Passover's nod to the existence and availability of a Jewish home in Israel is, for me, the greatest miracle of all. And that's a story worth retelling year after year after year.